What happens to my property portfolio if I divorce? Now, aside from the emotional strain that a divorce can have on you, the impact that it can have on your business, your properties, and your assets is astronomical. Now, in order to be able to determine the extent of these consequences, one first needs to ask the question, what matrimonial property regime applies to my marriage? Now, in South Africa, you have three property regimes. It's married in community of property, married out of community of property with no accrual, and married out of community of property with accrual. Now, what are the differences between these matrimonial property regimes and how do they impact your property portfolio? Now, in the first instance, when you're married in community of property, your estate is joint. This basically means that in the case of a divorce, the estate gets divided 50-50. Now, this does not necessarily translate to a consequence where one party gets left with the property and one doesn't. But if there is enough money in the estate, that can in fact happen. Why? Because when you divide the estate 50-50, it's a monetary value. And if one spouse receives 50% in cash and the other one receives 50% through a value of a property, then that's perfectly fine. So you can divide estates in community of property so that each spouse walks out with the same value. Now, when we speak about matrimonial property regimes out of community of property, there's two types. The one is without accrual. Now, without accrual, all that means is that each party can go their separate ways. The estate is divided prior to the marriage and post-marriage, and each party can simply walk away from the other without any consequences, bar a few exceptions. Now, if accrual does apply, so this would be out of community of property, but with accrual. So what is accrual? Accrual is the middle point between the other two marital regimes. It's where the assets outside of the marriage, prior to the marriage, still belong to you and your spouse respectively, right? Separated. But everything within the marriage is almost treated as though it was jointly gathered. Now, how accrual works is that if one spouse's estate grew more than the other spouse's estate, that difference is divided in half. Now, again, like community of property, if your property portfolio falls within this, there is a way to divide that little difference so that one person keeps the property and the other one gets a cash value out. But at the end of it, it should be 50-50. That difference in the growth of the estate should be separated and divided up 50-50.